conversation?
No, that was from a newspaper.
You read an article in the newspaper. Can you recall anything else about that article?
Not really.
Do you recall reading anything about dentists being involved in any fashion?
Right. So not a dentist, something, I don't know, some technical name.
And do you take from that article that you read some opinion in your own mind as to his guilt or innocence that he sits here today?
It entered my mind.
Okay.
Sure.
Is it a fixed opinion in your mind that you'd be unable to set aside?
No.
In other words, you understood the judge's instruction that as he sits here right now, he's presumed innocent.
Well, it's not really evidence yet.
And until you do hear evidence in the law, you can't reach your verdict. Is that the way you feel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you believe everything you read in the papers?
To a certain extent.
You ever read that it was going to rain this morning? Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Hardship. I think you indicated that you had some undue hardship in sitting on this type of case. Could you tell me about that?
Well, I'm an apprentice electrician. And I have to have so many hours in by July or I don't get a raise. And I'm not getting paid as much as I would be making the time before.
Is there a chance you'd lose your job entirely?
I don't think so.
Any chance that other than the obvious postponement in your career that you would starve to death or something
No.
after this 6 weeks? Do you feel like you could sit on this trial and listen to the evidence and listen to the law and give us a verdict, or would that be weighing so heavily on your mind that it would alter your ability to reach a verdict?
No.
In other words, sometimes deliberations after a long trial are lengthy. Would you hurry up your deliberations or hurry up reaching a verdict in order to get back to your job?
No.
A friend or relative who is charged with a crime, I believe you said.
No, I was charged with a crime.
Something more serious than a traffic ticket?
Yes, I'm serving probation.
Do you feel that the system handled you fairly in that case? Have some hesitation about that?
Yeah. Well, it was pretty just, I guess.
Okay. Did the public defender represent you in that case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The Miami office, I presume?
Yeah.
Anything about their handling of the case that would linger in your mind and cause you to hold that against Mr. Bundy's defense team in some fashion?
No.
You hesitate a little bit. I may not be asking the right questions, and it might be easier for you just to explain to me why that would weigh in any fashion in your listening to the evidence here.
Well, I was really not given a choice, you know.
Was it a plea bargaining situation?
Yeah. And she just couldn't do nothing for me. And I don't know if it was her experience or what.
Do you feel like in the back of your mind that would kind of affect you as you sit here today and listen to this criminal trial? The days went by?
Well, the whole way it was conducted probably would. I wouldn't say it wouldn't, for sure.
Okay. But as to be excused for cause, Judge.
You wish to put out on that?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Turner, basic issue is, can you put aside your case from this case, from your duties as a juror, if you're selected in this case?
Well, I couldn't say that for sure because if an incident happened like it did when I was in court, I don't know.
Do you mind telling me what happened?
Well, I was charged with sales of a controlled substance.
All right.
I had no defense, no nothing involved at all. It was just, they told me to do something, and I did. So I don't know, I don't think it was very fair in that aspect.
All right. You feel you didn't receive fair defense?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I understand that. Okay. Now, the fact that you didn't receive a fair defense, would that keep you from giving the state and Ted Bundy in this case a fair trial?
I don't think so.
Okay. In other words, obviously, your case doesn't have anything to do with this case,
No.
okay? And that's all Mr. McKeever wants to know. Can you give him a fair trial? And all I want to know is, can you give Ted Bundy a fair trial?
I guess so.
All right, make every effort to do that. I understand you're upset with your representation. Okay? I'm in the criminal justice business. I understand the situation. I think Mr. McKeever understands the situation. But we ask you to put that aside in this case and sit as a fair and impartial juror. And if we have your commitment that you can do that, I don't think there's any problem.
Well, I don't know. I have a sister that goes to college.
Yeah,
And then I have a cousin that goes to Tallahassee.
yeah.
And I don't know what my feelings would be.
I know you don't want to serve, all right, because it's going to
That's
be
not
an
it.
inconvenience.
I don't know what my feelings would be.
Yeah,
Because if it seemed good enough, but there might have been a slight doubt in my mind, I don't know if I'd let that one little doubt hold me back.
hold you back from what?
Giving a verdict of guilt.
All right, I understand what you're saying. Right now, I don't have the privilege of inquiring on that issue. Solely on the issue of, would you put aside the fact that you had poor representation in your judgment in your case, and judge this case on a fair and impartial basis? In other words, will you put aside what happened to you in your case and not let it come into this case?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge. I feel like I noticed that you had a hesitation and a long thought on that. Don't let us in any fashion put words in your mouth. You tell us exactly how you feel, and if you have a real problem putting that aside to where you don't think you could give us a fair trial, by all means say so.
It's not the procedures or anything like that. It's the type of the case.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. The charges he's bringing up, that he's brought up on, I couldn't judge them.
Just
It'd be impartial.
okay. You feel like you already have a fixed opinion, just knowing what they're going to do about the case as to his guilt or innocence?
I have an opinion towards that.
Could you set that opinion aside as you listen to the evidence, or do you feel like that would weigh right heavily on you, as you said?
I don't know for sure.
Would it be an impossibility to set it aside?
No.
Do you feel that you can honor the judge's instruction when he tells you that the man is presumed innocent until the state overcomes that presumption?
Yes.
You could follow that instruction? Do you have any problems with the death penalty? Feel like in certain cases it's warranted?
I don't know.
Let me see if I can ask you a little more clearly. You understand that in Florida, this is what we call a capital case, that if you're satisfied that the man is guilty of murder in the first degree and that be your verdict, then there is a possibility that the death penalty would be imposed. Would you not be able to return a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree simply because it might lead to the death penalty?
I wouldn't be able to return a verdict.
For cause?
Mr. Attorney, you understand that you have two votes in this case, conceivably. All right? One would be a vote for guilty or not guilty. Okay? The second would be a vote for mercy or life, a recommendation of life imprisonment, or a vote for the death penalty. That's in the second half of it. All right? But the second half only occurs if there's first a finding of guilt. Now, finding of guilt must be by a unanimous verdict. Everybody must vote that way, and for there to be a verdict of guilt returned. If a verdict of guilt is returned, then you would go to the second phase, all right? And that is, what would be the juror's recommendation for punishment? And in that phase, the law provides that it only has to be by a majority of 7. In other words, if you oppose the death penalty, you have the absolute right to abstain from voting for the death penalty and to vote for life imprisonment. Now, that principle of law preserves your right to your conscience and religious scruples and your opposition to the death penalty, such that you never have to vote to impose the death penalty on any man. Knowing that, would you be able to sit as a fair and impartial juror on the issue of guilt or innocence? In other words, the first part of the case.
No,
Why not?
I've already told you.
Would you repeat it for me?
He's guilty right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
That's enough to call it.
I'm satisfied. Thank you for your frankness and being with us here, and hope you're well on your principles.
Step right out the back door and go up the 7th floor, sir.
The next number, Madam Clerk.
321 William Philo.
Number 321. Take that seat right there, please, sir. Speak up so everyone can hear you. Thank you, sir.
Keever?
Judge?
Mr. Fowler, I'm Dan McKeever with the State Attorney's Office. It's a little more informal situation. We just want to have a conversation back into find out anything specifically that you have heard about the case and your feelings at this time. Have you ever sat on any type of trial before?
No.
Do you understand that this is the portion of the trial where the jurors get to talk and explain certain things, and it's the only portion where you can. After this, after the jury's selected, you have to sit and absorb the evidence, listen to the law, and then reach a verdict based solely on that. So if there's anything you want to explain at this time, please by all means do so. Don't let me force you into just a yes or no answer. Earlier, Mr. Simpson was asking you about the presumption of innocence and if you could follow the judge's instructions, which man is presumed innocent as he sits here today. And I believe you answered that you could or couldn't. I wasn't real clear on what you said.
I said that I wasn't sure, sir,
Why is that?
because I must be very honest about it. I assume you want me to be perfectly honest and sincere,
I appreciate
which I want to be. And very honestly and sincerely, I personally feel that he is extremely guilty.
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir, but this is the way I feel, and I'm very honest about it.
What do you base that on?
A very deep-seated feeling that I have. I realize that's a feeling and not logic.
Okay, but my real question is where did you gain the knowledge of guilt or innocence? In the newspapers or TV or something?
Just my own personal observations and from all that I've read and heard.
When did you first read about the case?
It's been several months,
A year ago?
approximately.
Did you hear about it when it first occurred, the crimes first occurred?
Yes, I did, sir.
And have you followed it in every news article since that time?
I don't know about every news article.
Almost every article?
Well, in many articles.
On a monthly basis or a weekly basis?
Well, probably on a monthly basis.
And so you were fairly familiar with the situation before you came into the court and were advised about the indictment, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you place a whole lot of reliability on what you read in the press?
I don't know exactly how you...
There's an old question that we sometimes ask, do you believe everything you read in the newspaper?
No, I do not.
Do you, on a scale of highly reliable to not very reliable, how do you rate the newspaper story?
Reasonably reliable.
Okay. Do you feel, as you sit here today, that your opinion as to this guilt or innocence could be set aside so that you could listen to the evidence and listen to the law and then reach your verdict?
I do not.
Move for cause, Judge.
You have any questions?
No question, Judge.
Thank you for your frankness, sir. We appreciate your frankness to the court, and it's exactly what we're looking for.
Well, I assume you wanted me to be perfectly
We
honest.
sure do, and we thank you for being so.
Thank you, sir.
Go right out the back door, please. Turn to the jury pool on the 7th floor.
322D, William Archer.
Juror number 322. D. That's it. Now, come right this way, please. Take that seat right there, sir. Please speak up so everyone can hear you. Thank you.
You are Mr. Archer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm Dan McKeever with the State Attorney's Office. This is a little more informal situation here now without the larger group. If there's anything that I ask you, and generally it may call for a yes or no answer, and yet you feel like you'd like to explain it, please by all means do so. Have you ever sat on a trial before?
Yes, sir.
What, civil trial or criminal trial?
Both.
Both? Recently?
Within the last 7 years
Here in Miami?
in Miami.
Did you reach verdicts in each case? Or?
In the civil verdict, in the criminal, it was a mistrial.
Okay. Because of a hung jury or something someone
No,
said?
because the defendant, there was an accusation of a payoff or bribery or trying to fix the jury.
During the trial?
Yes.
Anything about either one of those cases that would weigh heavily on you today if you were to sit on this jury?
At the time, it would have, but now I'm probably open-minded.
So you have a general understanding, though, of what we're doing now in selecting the jury. This is a conversation period. And after we select a jury, there's a regular trial, you hear evidence, then you hear the law from the judge, and you reach a verdict based on that. Do you understand that in Florida, was the criminal case a capital case?
It was murder, yes.
Murder in the first degree
Yes.
being considered? Now, did they go over the bifurcated trial situation? Probably didn't have one back then.
I understand.
What we have now is a fancy word called bifurcation. And all it means is we have two trials. We have a trial to determine guilt or innocence. And if your verdict is guilty of murder in the first degree, then we have a second trial or penalty phase where you hear other evidence and you deliberate and recommend to the judge whether or not the death penalty should be imposed. It's just a recommendation, and it would not be you doing the actual sentencing. Now, would there be anything about the fact that the possibility of the death penalty being imposed would cause you not to return a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree? No. You don't have any problem with death penalty. Have you read or heard anything about this case prior to coming to court?
Yes, sir.
What have you read?
Well, I read everything in the Miami Herald about it, the Miami News.
From day one,
Yes, sir.
from when the crimes first occurred? Have you read on a weekly basis or a monthly or daily, or
I'm a daily reader of newspapers.
you read it carefully?
Yes.
So if there would have been articles in the paper, you've probably read it. Is that
Yes, sir.
Fair. TV, same situation?
I watch the 6 o'clock news, 11 o'clock news.
Do you have a fixed opinion at this time as to Mr. Bundy's guilt or innocence?
I don't know.
In other words, do you believe everything you read in the press?
It's a hard question.
On a scale of reliability, how do you rate, say, highly reliable to not very reliable, somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between.
Fairly reliable? Do you understand and could you follow that instruction the judge has already given you, that the man is presumed innocent as he sits there today? And you feel you could set these newspaper articles aside and whatever opinion you might have, could you set it aside and presume him innocent until you'd heard all the facts and the evidence?
I don't know.
Be tough. I don't know is almost a good answer for me, but I'm going to have to press you on that and ask you for a yes or no.
I would try to toss them aside.
You understand that along with that presumption of innocence, there is no requirement that they put on any evidence whatsoever. No requirement that the defendant testify in any fashion. And that's not Dan McKeever telling you that. That'll be an instruction from the court. Could you also follow that instruction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you expect him to testify if you were so instructed that he didn't have to? That's up to him and his defense, whatever they want to put on. Okay? Would you hold the state to its burden of proving the case? And I'm sure you've been asked that
Yes.
1,000 times in the other trial. But you understand that it's the state's burden to prove the case too.
Yes, sir.
Any hardship, of course it's a hardship to be sequestered and sit on a case for several weeks as long as we're talking about. I understand you work with the Postal Service.
Sure.
Any undue hardship that this case would cause on you because of having to be sequestered?
Not job-wise,
Home-wise?
but several months ago, my wife suffered a shoulder separation and a broken shoulder. She's under doctor's treatment right now, and when I received my jury summons, I thought she'd be well by now. It's a shoulder separation. I underestimated the time.
Still having trouble?
She still has it. I have a doctor's.
We'll take your word for it. What, is it the kind of thing where you have to help her in and out?
I have to help her fasten her. She has no movement of the right arm to fasten her brassiere or blouses in the back.
Or to just get daily things done for her? Is that
Heavy things.
Is there anybody else that could assist you in that problem?
No immediate family now.
I noticed you have a 14-year-old boy. Would he be of any assistance?
He lives with my first wife.
I see. That'll live with you. Any neighbors that could?
Last night I got home 11 o'clock at night, and no neighbor had helped.
If you specifically found a neighbor, and I don't know if you would know of one or not that would understand the problem and work with you on it, do you think that might solve the problem?
My wife would be upset.
Is there such a problem there that you would not be able to listen to the evidence and reach a verdict in this case that would be bearing so heavily on you, you would be distracted from the case?
I would be distracted, yes.
We're going to have to move for cause, Judge.
No objection.
You may be excused, sir, and we hope your wife's better.
Thank you.
Sir, go right out the back door there, please. Turn to the 7th floor jury pool.
326 Carl Johnson.
Number 326. Take that seat right there, sir, and speak up so everyone can hear you. Thank you.
Mr. Kiever? Yes. Just a second. Okay.
Mr. Johnson, I'm Dan McKeever with the State Attorney's Office. It's a little more informal situation here without the large group. It's a conversation situation. Have you ever sat on any kind of trial before?
I've testified in criminal trials.
Did you observe the jury selection and the general procedure of that trial?
No, I was an expert witness for the state's attorney's office in Sebring.
This was just to patrolling laboratory work or something?
Right.
Do you understand that this is a portion of the trial where we do talk back and forth, and it's the only time that you can talk to us? If there's anything that you'd like to explain to us, by all means, please do so. I'm sure that you understand that after we do pick a jury, we go into a regular trial and you hear evidence, people testify, and then the law is given to you, you get your verdict based solely on that. Was a verdict reached in that criminal case?
Yes, it was.
Were you happy with the verdict?
Well, it was really immaterial to me. I merely acted as a with a testing laboratory and a special area of expertise for the state of Florida.
Anything that occurred in that case or during your experience with that case that caused you prejudice for or against the state, for or against the defense in general?
No, I don't believe so. The only time I was present in the courtroom was while I testified, and then we were allowed to listen to the summation.
Anything about that case that would cause you to be affected in some fashion if you sat on this case?
I don't believe so.
The 24-year-old girl, I believe it is that correct? Is she in college or married? Or?
She's attending the interior design school at the Ringling School of Art.
Sarasota?
Right.
Is she, and she's not married?
She's not married.
Are the rest of them at home with you, or are they scattered around here and there?
No, they're home in school.
Going to school locally?
Well, my older son's going to the aviation school, George Baker Aviation School. No, A&P license.
Anything about your family or your job situation that would cause you just tremendously impossible undue hardship to sit on this jury?
Yes, I wrote and requested an excuse because the nature of my business is that we provide an expedite analysis for aviation fuel. And in essence, we control all the fuel in the whole Caribbean for the airline industry by the nature of our work. And many of our clients, we give them a 4-hour response time on testing so that the fuel can be made available to the various airlines. My older daughter is scheduled for a serious kidney operation the 3rd of July. I'd like to be available for that. My wife has a
You have any problem with
heart condition.
No objection, Your Honor. I think that's...
that situation? The court totally and completely understands about your daughter's operation and will excuse you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
We're out the back door, please, sir. Report to the jury pool on the 7th floor.
3:30, Charlie Mitchell.
3:30. Juror number 330. Take that seat right there, sir. Speak up, please, so everyone can hear you. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dan McKeever with the State Attorney's Office. This is a more informal situation than we had before. We just want to chat back and forth. Do you understand, have you ever sat on a jury before?
No.
Do you have a feeling for the way a Florida trial progresses?
No, I figured it fair.
This is the portion of the trial where we talk back and forth. It's the only time that jurors can talk to the lawyers. After we talk and whatnot, you will sit, of course, and listen to the evidence and then be instructed as to the law and reach your verdict based solely on that. If you have anything you want to explain to me or tell the judge, please by all means do so. Just give us a yes or no if you feel like it needs an explanation. I noticed earlier you stated that you had some friends or relatives that had been victims of crimes. Can you tell me about that?
I was a victim of a crime.
What kind of a crime was it?
Armed robbery.
Did you testify in court?
They never solved the case.
Was the man ever apprehended at all?
No, he wasn't.
Were you injured in some fashion?
No.
Scared?
Yeah, you'll be scared too looking at those guys shotgun.
How long ago was it?
3 years ago.
Do you harbor a feeling either for or against the state because they didn't apprehend that person?
No, I don't.
Anything about that incident, that experience that would cause you to be affected in some fashion if you sat on this jury?
No.
What about your friends or relatives that have been charged with a crime?
All, his 4 nephews, 4 cousins. All of them was charged with armed robbery.
Is that the only crime they've ever been charged with?
Yes.
Did they go to trial?
Yes.
Was a verdict reached in their case?
Yes.
Is there something about that situation? Did you attend the trial and watch it?
I attended 2 of them.
Were they tried separately, 4 different trials?
Yes, they were.
Is there any feeling you have for or against the state as a result of that experience?
No.
Do you feel like the system handled all 4 of them fairly?
Yes, they did.
Anything for or against the defense, the way their defense was presented that would cause you to be affected in this case?
No.
Anything in general as to that courtroom experience that would affect you in this case?
No.
Do you have any problem with the death penalty?
No.
You feel it's warranted in certain situations?
Yes, I do.
How about publicity? You read anything about this case?
Yes, I read something about it.
When was the first time you heard something about
The first time it was on TV.
it? Way back on day one when it first occurred?
Yes.
And did you also read newspaper articles?
Yes.
Have you read how do you read a newspaper? Real thoroughly?
I just, well, I sketched through, the main parts of it.
Do you subscribe to a newspaper?
No, I don't.
Just pick one up now and then and read
I
through
buy
it?
one every morning on my way to work.
Have you read, would you say that you've read just about every single article there has been about Mr. Bundy?
No, I haven't.
Just now and then found one?
Yes.
Would you say that it was on a monthly basis or a weekly basis?
Sometimes, I pick it up, and I glance through it, be on the front page, and I read it.
If it caught your eye on the front page, that's the one you'd read.
That's when I read it.
And can you tell me something about what you've learned from reading the newspaper articles?
Just, they say that he was charged with the crime, a murder and things like that, in general.
Do you, in a kind of a scale of reliability, do you believe everything you read in the newspaper?
No, I don't.
Do you believe most of it? Do you feel it's fairly reliable, not very reliable?
Most of it is fairly reliable.
Do you have a fixed opinion as you sit here today as to Mr. Bundy's guilt?
No, I don't.
Do you have any opinion?
Nope.
Can you put aside whatever knowledge you gained from reading and hearing about the case, can you put that aside and just base your verdict solely on the evidence you hear in court?
Yes, I think I can.
And you understood the judge's instruction about the presumption of innocence, that until the state carries its burden and proves the case to you, Mr. Bundy is presumed innocent.
That's right.
You can follow that instruction.
Yes, I can.
If the judge also, in addition to instructing you as to his innocence, instructed you that it was for the state to prove the case, that Mr. Bundy did not have to put on any witnesses, nor did Mr. Bundy have to testify, would you be able to follow that instruction?
Yes, I can.
Would you expect Mr. Bundy to testify if the judge told you that he didn't have to?
No, I don't.
Any particularly, of course, it's a hardship on everybody to have to be sequestered and sit in this type of a case. Any particularly undue, just impossible hardship that would cause you to prefer not to sit on this jury?
Well, the only thing I can have, my little business at night I have to be there.
What kind of a business
It's a
is
small, that's a clean office building.
it? Is there anybody that can cover that for you?
My wife would be a little too much for her.
Is that your only source of income, or is that kind of an extra source?
That's the extra sort.
I see. Can you get along without that for a few weeks in order to give us a jury hearing?
I might.
Is there something about that that would weigh heavily on your mind and cause you not to be able to listen to the evidence in this case?
No.
Do you feel like you could listen carefully to the evidence and give your deliberations and your verdict plenty of time to consider back there, without considering the fact that if you hurry up, you could get back to your job?
No, it's,
You wouldn't hurry or rush your verdict to get
no,
back?
because I feel this way, a man's life depends on the way I feel.
Exactly. Thank you, sir.
Haggard?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please support. Mr. Mitchell, I believe you said you're a crane operator?
Yes.
Yeah, my dad was a crane operator. Where do you do that?
Dade County Parks and Recreation.
Okay. Tell me something about yourself. Grew up in Miami?
I grew up mostly here in Miami and in Jordan.
Right. Thomasville, I believe you said?
Thomasville.
Okay. Went to school in Thomasville?
I went to school down here.
Where'd you go to school?
I went all the schools.
Okay.
I went Dunbar, Holmes Elementary, Liberty City Primary, Bunch Park, North Dade.
Tell me something about hobbies, things you like to do when you're not working. I know if you're working 2 jobs, you don't have much
I have a
time.
lot of time. I love fishing and hunting and all sports,
Okay. Freshwater, saltwater?
all kinds.
Okay. Anything else? That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Military, you serve in the military? Tell me something about what you read. What do you remember about what you read?
I don't remember that much because, I glanced through the paper on most of the reads the supposed page in the paper. Because most of when I pick up the paper, 9 times out of 10 it's the same thing on the front page. Who did this to someone or who robbed someone. But I just read the supposed page, the supposed page, and listen to the news media.
Same old negative stuff.
Same old negative stuff.
Okay. In this case, then, you didn't particularly follow these articles?
Nope.
You don't have any opinion, as Ted Bundy sits here this morning, as to whether he's guilty?
No, the only opinion I have is when the man walked through that door, he's innocent to whoever on the jury finds him guilty by innocent of this crime.
And you understand that the state in this case has to prove not only a crime was committed beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, but that they have to prove that Ted Bundy and nobody else committed that crime beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt.
Yes.
And if they fail to prove that Ted Bundy committed that crime beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, would you be able to return a verdict of not guilty?
I think so.
His Honor instructs you on the law that the presumption of innocence continues and abides with Mr. Bundy throughout this trial, right until you retire into the jury room. Would you follow that instruction? And if His Honor instructs you on the law of reasonable doubt, law of reasonable doubt, one way to say it is reasonable doubt is a doubt with a reason behind it.
Objection.
Okay. Or another way to say it is it's proof to a moral certainty. Another way to say it is proof to a
Well,
full
I think you've
affirmative.
done enough 2-3 ways. If you give away all of our secrets if you go too far.
His Honor instructs you the state would have to exclude every doubt except an imaginary, a speculative, or a conjectural doubt. Would you follow that instruction?
That's similar to this. Good.
Would you follow that instruction?
Yes, I think I can follow that instruction.
I think you appreciate the seriousness from one of your comments in this case, do you not, of the situation, this case, and the gravity of your decision. You understand as a juror, Mr. Mitchell, that you are the sole judge of the facts, the sole judge of what to believe and what to disbelieve from each and every witness that testifies here. There are 150 witnesses. You have to look at 150 men or women and determine whether to believe or disbelieve that witness. Would you be able to do that?
Yes, in some cases.
If His Honor instructs you as an aid or as a guide for you, a legal measure, a legal yardstick for you to use in your judgment, assessment as a juror with the other jurors, in determining whether to believe or disbelieve a particular witness or all the witnesses, that you can look at a witness's demeanor, their expressions, how they speak, and so on, whether they wiggle in the witness chair, whatever. You can look at the witness's frankness, openness, candidness. You can look at the witness's intelligence or lack of intelligence. You can look at the witness's interest in the outcome of the case for one reason or another. You can look at the witness's opportunity to know and observe. You can look at the witness's ability to remember what they supposedly observed. And you can look at the reasonableness of what the witness says in terms of the whole case. And you can look at the reasonableness of what the witness says in terms of your common sense as a juror. Would you be able to do that?
I think I could.
And you understand, His Honor instructs you, you determine what weight or credit to give to a witness's testimony. And if His Honor instructs you that a witness's believability can be impeached, reduced in value, reduced in reliability, because that witness has made previous inconsistent statements with what they say in the courtroom, would you be able to follow that instruction?
Yes, I think I can.
The words that use prior inconsistent statements. His Honor instructs you on what's called circumstantial evidence, circumstances, that every circumstance in a chain of circumstances must be proven beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. Okay? And if there's any one circumstance that's not proven in the chain beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt, that requires a verdict of not guilty. Would you be able to follow that instruction?
Yes, I think so.
If His Honor instructs you insofar as circumstances, that every circumstance must be consistent with guilt and inconsistent with innocence. Would you follow that instruction? And if they're looking at circumstances, if there are two reasonable interpretations of the circumstances, one pointing to innocence and one pointing to guilt, you're obligated on your oath as a juror to follow that interpretation that points to innocence. Could you do that?
Okay. I will reasonably scope I can.
All right, sir. Have you ever have you ever come up to somebody that you thought you knew and
Objection.
you
I'll
mistook them?
sustain that. We've been through that.
Has someone come up to you and thought you were somebody else?
Objection.
Same.
Excuse me one moment. Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much. We have nothing further.
Judge, I have just one or two that I need to find out, Mr. Mitchell, if the crimes that your cousins were charged with were tried here in Miami, or were they up in Thomasville, or what?
Well, 3 of them was here. One was in Georgia, then it carried them to New York, and to Cleveland.
Okay. For other crimes, or
Other crimes.
did the ones that you watched was here locally?
Yes.
Did the Miami public defender handle any of the cases?
No, they had no.
They had their private lawyers? Was Mr. Haggard in any way involved in
I
any
don't
of
know
it?
none of the lawyers.
Okay. Are you satisfied with their defense representation in the trials?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
Anything further?
Nothing further.
Take him over, Mr. Watson.
Okay.
And bring you out your next.
Sir, would you come right over here, please, sir, and have a seat for 1 minute? Number 333. Young lady, take that seat right there, please, ma'am. Speak up now, everyone can hear you. Thank you, ma'am. Come right this way, please, sir.